Hey, everybody, welcome to tonight's late night happy hour. We almost let the cat out of the bag, Dave. That would have been terrible.
God.
So it was a little bit of a tease there. Ooh, look at you getting in the spirit of things. Brian Kamenetzky,
Rose.
Andy Kamenetzky, joined, of course, in our center section there by former colleague Dave Dameshek, who we used to work together at 710. And what have you been up to since then, Dave? Like, how you been? Give us a
We've
quick
spent all these
recap.
years trying to track you down, and then we finally did to bring you on the show.
Give us a quick recap of the last 11 years.
Well, not much has changed. I have many babies spread across the San Fernando Valley now. Multiple homes.
Excellent.
I might be wrong. Why I can't get myself on camera? What gives here? I don't know.
You know what? You're not the only one. You're not the only one. A lot of people
struggle.
This thing, since last we were working together, this thing called podcasting has really exploded. I dipped my toe into those waters.
Yes, this thing. I even have a photo of it. There it is. Let's show people this. Right there. Look at that.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's one of my 17 podcasts over the last 15 years. Yes, Daves of Thunder. That's some hooey and applesauce I do with my good pal David Feeney, Hollywood writer extraordinaire. I'm still doing some stuff, some sports talk on the Adam Carolla show every day, his podcast, and I'm just about to start doing something in time for the explosion, the return of sports 2020. Allegedly, you guys have heard that they're supposed to come back. I'm not some sucker who's going to blindly just assume that's all true. But fingers crossed. I'm about to jump in on something great that I'm really excited about. But we can't release that information for another 7 days to 2 weeks.
All right.
Okay, how confident are you? And not about this project. We talked a little bit before you.
Let's back up. How confident? I'm kidding.
Track record. No, very confident.
How confident are you, though, that we're actually going to see, maybe not all the sports, but some of the sports, like that one league can go off generally without a hitch?
I think that pro football is going to happen. Whether or not it's going to finish, that's another matter. But I do think listen, it is. I hate that kind of vapid kind of world weary wokeness about, like, in this $1 billion industry, those billionaires are going to do everything they can to get it out there. But as a matter of fact, there are billions of dollars on the line, multiple contracts with the networks and otherwise. So I do anticipate that they're going to do their very best. Now, I will not be surprised, and in fact, I'll predict here and now, hot take, there are going to be some forfeits along the way. I mean, they're just what are you going to do? It's not like it's in a bubble with like it is with NBA or NHL. I mean, this is not going to be the equivalent of that. And what's going to happen when the Rams are due up in Seattle on Sunday, and then on Friday we get word, 4 of the Seahawks have it? I mean, are the Rams going to get on the plane? Are the Seahawks, or vice versa? Are the Seahawks going to get on a plane? I just anticipate that we are not going to see 16 full games from the NFL. I think college football is in more dire straits, to be honest with you. I'm just waiting for that.
College football, they have the additional problem of trying, like, even by college football standards, the level of cynicism required to demand that these kids go out and play when they can't actually go to class. I'm not even sure college football can do that.
It's such a bad look. It really is a bad look. It's a bad look for any sport. I hate to, we're just out of the gate here, so I hate to get all grim on you, but really do.
No, we got an hour to pick it back up, so it'll be all right.
All right, we'll see what we can do. We're going to have a tall hill to climb after
this. It could get gloomier.
The cavalier kind of thing that we've heard from a lot of random fans out there is, why can't they do this? These are young men in good health. They certainly should be mostly, if not entirely, immune to the dangers of the 19. But that ignores the fact that offensive linemen are all caring. I mean, how many times do we have to see the story of, hey, have you seen blank former all-pro offensive lineman?
Right.
Since he retired, like, oh yeah, he's lost 190 pounds now or whatever it is. They're unrecognizable. I mean, these guys are all carrying around artificial weight to play pro football. That's not and they're obviously, as people keep, as I don't probably have to tell you, these are grown men intentionally running into one another on purpose over and over again. That seems like a recipe for disaster. And what happens if legitimately, I hate to be grim, but what if one of them really does get seriously ill? It's going to seem so ghoulish to say, hey, get back out there and play.
Well, okay, this is a much larger scale issue, the pandemic, than the example I'm going to give. But like a few years ago, when Chris Bosh wanted to come back to the NBA and, the blood clots that he was experiencing, there was no way he was going to get back on the court, even if he signed every imaginable waiver, indemnifying the NBA or whatever team from any type of responsibility whatsoever. Because, like you said, not to be ghoulish, but no NBA team wants to be the one that signed Chris Bosh and then he died. I mean, that's really
what it was
going to be.
That's exactly right. That's a great the one I've used. I mean, now that we're heading down this dark path.
We'll start talking about all the children you fathered in the valley in a second here. Don't worry.
Poor women. What? But for
you
real,
and Dwight Howard.
Before we dig in, I really am. I've said it before. I really am. If you grade me on a curve, on the Semitic curve, I mean, really, I've done gangbusters work here. Two women, 4 children. This is great work.
I don't mean to get too far afield, but Andy and I used to talk about it all the time. Like, what do you think of Dameshek? And I'd be like, he's got a certain virility about him, where I just feel like he'd be really good, just like. You look at a woman and get her pregnant. I mean,
a lot of people are surprised by my vigorous lovemaking ability, but but thank you for that compliment. No, I say all the time, isn't it a funny irony that the least masculine guy that you could ever come across, which is me, when it's time to get clutch, Dameshek, who's more clutch?
We've always said if you put Dameshek out to stud, I mean, my Lord, the results that could happen.
Yeah. Meantime, though, I feel bad for my children because the father figure that they have can't, for some reason, figure out how to square up his face onto the camera right now. What is going on
You're
here?
fine.
Listen, but it's weird. I've always said that I suffer from the same syndrome as Ted Kennedy did. And Ben Roethlisberger does. It's the Travolta syndrome, which is to say that some of us, the first 15, 20 pounds, all in the head. Like some people, it distributes over the body. I just got one of those giant heads when I get too much weight, and the 19 has not been good to me in that regard. So, Yeah, maybe it's just the massive size of my.
Well, I would just assume that you were doing this show from the back of a moving van. So it's. That's what I figured.
Really, I apologize, but anyhow, So I'll tell you this: I have been. I'm not trying to get up Mount Pius and weigh in on this, but I do resent the notion. I said 4 months ago that when this all started, one of the predictions I made was. At some point, society, the leagues will call for sports to return, and you just know that right behind that is one of the worst things. What's the line from Usual Suspects? Greatest trick the devil ever played was the greatest trick by the
world
devil.
that it didn't exist.
Right, but in our real world is that the greatest trick is convincing the general public to side with the billionaires over the millionaires in professional sports. This thing of they're getting paid a lot of money and we need our sports. It's like, yeah, but as it happens, they also are human beings. And as a result, they may have significant others. They may have children. And some of them, I don't think a ton of them, I said 4 months ago, I don't think it's going to be 80%, but I think there's going to be some small percentage that says, I don't want to play. And the pushback is going to be from the fans. How dare you do this to us? I've been pleasantly surprised by the fans' response to this. It's the media. There's some percentage of the media that's like, how dare you guys? It's crazy. And I don't want to be up on Mount Pius about it, because I think we all, to some degree, depend upon sports. The three of us certainly do for our livelihoods. But I mean, what am I going to say? I'm going to stop my feet? You better come back and play sports for my pleasure.
It's one of those things that I am fully aware of how conflicted I am. Because on one hand, I know that it is better for me in the aggregate if sports just jumps back into the deep end of this pool, looking to make a belly flop splash. Like, that is the best possible thing for me. I also recognize that there's a lot of legitimate safety issues, and these players are nervous, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them for worrying about, how much the league really has their best interests at heart. They recognize the money too. The money matters to them. I mean, they would not be doing this were it not for the money. Like, none of them love the game enough to be doing this for free.
That's
now, like right now. I mean, they wouldn't anyway, but especially now.
It's a semi-cynical but absolutely accurate point that I think sports fans don't want to hear about. But yeah, listen, it's not a coincidence, the recurring comment that you hear from professional athletes: this is a business, because they become jaded by it and everything else. And, to your earlier point, same goes, I guess, with concussions in football. You can talk to guys and they have made, it's not as though like, what? I don't believe in concussions. That's fake news. That's not the mentality of pro football players. It is, I understand the risk, but I've also set my family up for generations on end. And if I end up a little daft in 30 years, it's worth the trade-off. Now, that you might talk to them when they're 55 and they might sing a different song, but that's the calculation. But it does, on some level, you're inhuman if you can't acknowledge that that's a little ghoulish. It's a little like, okay, they should take the risk because America needs it.
Well, I've already reached that point where I feel a little bit bad watching football games. But I mean, you've seen it, Dave. Like, especially when you get a chance to be, if you're lucky enough to get down on the field and be able to really see what's happening and how fast they're moving and all that, and the collisions, and hear them. It's like, I'm not really sure we should be doing this. I mean, it's really entertaining and people are well compensated, but this isn't really like in Star Trek, like in Future Man or something like that. They're not playing football anymore. At some point they decided it was a bad idea.
Football is being played. It's just being played by the robots. That's all.
Right.
We're like, wait, people? Why would they use that? Why did they use to have people doing that when we could have robots doing the same damage to each other?
Now, on one hand, the robots would be safer. On the other hand, though, we're so worried about everything being outsourced to the robots and all of us losing our jobs. Like, I mean, would the players put their feet down at the idea of getting replaced by the robots?
Absolutely.
Don't you see the creep of esports? All the players are into it. That's where it blends together. Patrick Mahomes doesn't finish actually physically going under center for the Kansas City Chiefs. Rather, he's going to just be controlling the quarterback robot. You see?
Oh, he can control his own hologram.
He's the one, right? You're still a fan of Patrick Mahomes. It's just Patrick Mahomes bot.
But it's control. But like, for all the BS that fans will give, and like, I would play this game for free, and this, not football, you wouldn't. You would not play professional football for free, Joe Q fan.
It's one of my, but it is one of my favorite conversations to have, because as you guys know, professional athletes are imbued with superhuman physical gifts.
Yes.
And it's kind of the chicken or the egg thing, because you hear those guys will tell you over and over again, oh, there was a guy who I came up with who was more talented than anybody. And it really does come down to drive. And to dip back into the start of 2020, the awful thing that kind of started this all-time terrible year was Kobe. It's interesting that the figure that Kobe Bryant was for professional athletes resonated in a way that is, I really think, has never been seen before because of his drive. They respect the drive, and they could see that, and they were able to pick that up from 3,000 miles away or wherever they were watching growing up. Kobe, the those current professional athletes were like, wow, Kobe was my all-time guy. And that really resonated in a way, but it's that drive that gets them to the pros. It's not just the superhuman gifts, but also because of the success, they have this insane, with very few exceptions, they all think they're the best, the most talented guy out there. And I don't even remember where we started with this point, but yes, that is the idea that that these guys feel compelled that they have to share their talent, frankly, is not why they're going out there. They're doing it because they. And the other point I will say from a competitive thing, the one thing I will say for the purity of sport is the other thing that I really have noticed is when they talk about Kobe Bryant or Tom Brady or Michael Jordan, the thing you hear recurringly about those guys is it doesn't matter if we're playing tiddlywinks. He wants a win. One. The reference to tiddlywinks feels outdated since no one has played it in 100 years. But either way, I get the larger thrust of it. The competitive spirit is enough that I did say, I think some percentage of guys that have enough money in the bank, guys that have little kids, aren't they going to be inclined to step down? And pro football guys have said to me, oh, no, not Tom Brady, not Aaron Rodgers. They won't step aside. Now, why wouldn't those guys? They've had more than enough money and success and everything else because they don't want to get off the train and have it move on without them. Well, they feel like if they miss a season of their career that everything's going to move on without them and they'll never get it back, which is an interesting point.
But also Tom Brady takes 3 hits a year. So I mean he could play until he's 50 because nobody ever touches the guy.
Well, you really realize just how, relatively few hits, like Brian was saying, that he took, because Tom Brady, like in his prime, was immobile, much less where we are now. So, I mean, like, there's no way you can survive with that little mobility in the NFL if you're getting knocked down constantly.
It's a virtue, right? It's sort of the long play for Tom Brady. He was always this level of athlete, which is to say he had a few specifics. I mean, he has a pro level arm and obviously can analyze things in split second. That split second to divine what isn't directly in front of him in a second is why he is the greatest quarterback of all time, is to be able to analyze everything in front of him with the speed at which he does. But also, it's kind of like Frank Gore. I think you guys know Maurice Jones-Drew as well. I've seen, we've all been knocking around at Rams camp here and there, Rams practice. And Maurice made a great point about Frank Gore. He said Frank Gore is able to play so long into his career because his game was never based on speed. He didn't have to lose a step. Chris Johnson lost a step, and then he had no. He was
useless.
Right. Tom Brady, that's why Ben Roethlisberger probably doesn't play until 43. That's why Cam Newton doesn't play till 43, because their game is predicated on more physicality. Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Drew Brees never get touched at any point in their career, so it's of no matter. The guys, one of the great paradoxes in sport is Shaquille O'Neal, Mario Lemieux, Eric Lindros, Rob Gronkowski, Mark Bavaro, and so on. The biggest dude.
Mark Bavaro.
Well, that's I'm making a deep dive for you. I'm an old man.
Why not go Jay Novacek as long as you're at it?
Because Novacek was that would take me off point and shame the devil if I ever got off point. The biggest dudes, the most physical dudes, you think, oh, it must be so hard to tackle them, to hit them or whatever. But they're the constant in those severe collisions. It takes 3 guys to get those guys to the ground, so they wear out more quickly, as it turns out, than anyone else. Earl Campbell was a gigantic human being, but he was done after 5 years, basically, because he was the one that it wasn't one guy giving him a lick. It took 3 guys to get him to the ground every single play.
Shaq used to say as indestructible as Shaq looked, and it took like a village to foul him, right? He used to say, it hurts. I mean, he would say all the time, I'm getting killed. The reason he was upset that the refs weren't calling this stuff is because he was feeling it. Like, if he wasn't feeling it, he wouldn't even be compelled to complain.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right. Yes. Right. And but also the human, I guess the referees are human beings ultimately too. And on some level you see that and you're like, come on, man. I mean, You're real. Scott Pollard hurt you? Come on, man. Come on, Jack. Tough it up, bro.
Pollard. Andy, you mentioned the mobility.
Cherokee Parks doesn't hit that hard, Jack. Come on. You're way better than that.
The lack of mobility. You mentioned, Andy, the lack of mobility from Tom Brady. Let me tell you about some people who are very mobile. The people
I know where you're going with this.
The people at vsliquor.com who deliver liquor right to your door. Dave, you're a drinker. As we know, I don't know if you've ever ordered from vsliquor.com. If you haven't, have I got an opportunity for you? You go to the checkout code at vsliquor.com. You write in sports. See how it's written down there at the bottom? 15% off your first order. And even a successful man like you, with his own podcast, can use 15% off his
with a
first
podcast
order.
empire and unnamed projects coming.
That's right.
Don't spill the beans. But yes, as it happens, you've touched on one of my passions, booze.
We see the Rolling Rock right behind you.
Specifically, booze delivered to you.
Hey,
even better. What's better than booze? Booze that you don't even have to leave the house to get. That is I like the sound of
wow,
that.
the lighting suddenly improved in your room.
Did it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, big pie face staring
in
back
the sense,
at the
well, in the sense the lights appear to be on now. Before
Kamenetzky sandwich. Dameshek right in the middle there. There you go.
Ew.
Careful, or one of you two is going to wind up pregnant.
You are that good.
That's what I can
remember the movie Junior? It'd be just like the movie Junior with Arnold and DeVito and Emma Thompson.
I mean, I'm a married man, but the way you described it as that pleasurable earlier in the show, I mean, who wouldn't be tempted by that? Just saying.
Yeah, I have no answer for it. Well, I do. It's the vast. Well, I can tell you, it's every woman who was living in the Pittsburgh area from about 1988 to the year 2000. I know that for a fact because I was there, and none of them talked to me.
Well, I bet they regret it now when they see the Empire. They're like, man, if he had given me a chance, I could be the one that could teach him how to center himself.
This is ridiculous. What is going? I really can't. What gives here? Why can't I do it?
I don't know.
I've finally been defeated.
I feel like you're a perfectionist here. You've had it a couple times.
Yeah, I feel like you're overthinking this, Dave.
Okay, here we go. Ready? Here we go. There we go. All right.
Now that's perfect.
That's great.
I'm just gonna sit like this.
Really good.
You look like a pro now.
Thanks, fellas. I'm getting. See, it's this head of hair. That's the difference. See, fellas, you see that? I like Andy that you finally you joined Brian. You know.
Yeah.
I actually got a haircut tonight.
That's a big update for you guys. One big news. I did, like I said, 4 months ago when the 19 first arrived, I made a few predictions. One of which was that a lot of things in society, professions and otherwise, are about to get exposed as not just inessential, because obviously this very conversation is inessential, but are people going to miss these things? And one of those things I threw out there was haircuts. I don't think, do we need barbers and 2 buzz cuts in by the hand to Dameshek on Dameshek? I think the results are in. I don't think I'll ever pay for a haircut again.
I say I disagree. Maybe you, but I think society has decided 100% that haircuts are necessary, because I'm fairly sure that's why the pandemic is spreading again. Like, we've decided that drinking in bars and getting your haircut are 2 things that are monumentally essential for us.
Who knew? Right. That's been a revelation to me, that there are so many people in our society that hold getting a haircut or actually getting their hair colored so close to their heart, so important to their day-to-day life.
I mean, I think it looks good. I'm not gonna lie, man. I think that actually looks good. I guess I would have predicted that somebody. Well,
all right. I mean, listen.
Straight on.
Don't judge me too harshly.
I've only done
2 haircuts on my head. Look, in my life, and I think this is pretty good for
as long as you never turn your head, you can pull this off. Nobody will know the difference as long as your head's like, if you keep framing yourself perfectly, just like you are right now, like nobody's ever going to know. Mm-hmm. I think it looks fine. I really do. We've seen worse. we've seen, because, we've been doing this show for a while.
We've seen worse.
I'm saying, as far as homemade haircuts, as far as, the homegrown, did you do it literally yourself?
I literally did it in the mirror and just buzzed it down and did I did that thing. Really? You know how they do that thing when the bar? Well, you guys may not remember, but
I do.
They do that thing where they put your hair between the fingers and then they just keep cutting it. I'm like, how hard could that be? And my wife said, "Oh, don't you dare! Don't you dare!" I said, "Who's going to see me besides you and the kids anyway, and people on Zoom? Who cares?" Like I say, the results are in.
First, one of the things that makes it difficult, I mean, whether you're just talking about cutting your hair, I do some beard trimming. Doing this stuff in a mirror is super confusing. It's really difficult to figure out exactly how you're lining stuff up. I know when I'm trying to use scissors, trimming this, I can never tell if I'm actually cutting anything. It's really difficult lining this stuff up in a mirror.
That's why
that's part of what makes it confusing.
And every once in a while, and Amy, I know you're doing your best. You leave a patch. And it happens.
Yes.
But that's why I just do. I get in the shower, and I'm like a blind person. I do everything by feel, and I just do the head, top, and bottom. Everything goes. And I do it that way, and only with rare exception will I'll do a modified sort of Andy's doing the Shel Silverstein. If I don't have enough time to shave the beard, if I've let it go for a few days or whatever. But otherwise, I just do all of it at one time. You feel around, you do it all in the shower, and you're good to go.
Is it one of those things though? Do you remember when you decided it's over with? I'm gonna lose the hair in favor of keeping dignity.
I was 14. And I said to myself...
He's only barely exaggerating.
I'm not exaggerating. I noticed my hairline starting to go when I was a sophomore in high school.
Wow.
It was not
but that's kind of
college.
The long play. It's like Sparky Anderson. Sparky Anderson, it was oh, man, that poor guy, he looks 54 years of age, and he's only 31.
Right,
but, again, the long play... Because when he was 75,
he still looked 45.
54.
I have grown into my age to the point where I am, honestly, other than the children wear you down, I'm much more tired than I used to be and all that. But the actual look isn't much different now than it was when I was, 28. It's just that I finally look.
You're not
I actually look the age that I am.
You look. It really is remarkable how much you look exactly the same. Maybe if you just bite the bullet, okay, short term, 26. I'm just shaving. I'm gonna be smooth like a dolphin from the neck up
the
rest of my life. Maybe that'll be a short term. Ooh, I don't know if that was but I'll tell you,
like a dolphin.
When you're 50, though, where are you guys? See, why I asked if you remember when you started doing that. It's kind of like the cell phone thing. I couldn't tell you exactly when everybody. It just was. People were texting each other and stopped taking calls. I couldn't tell you what year that was. It just was. I just stopped taking people's calls and nobody needed house phones anymore. I wonder if that's sort of the same sort of thing as hair. Also, the other thing that's kind of like that actually is below the neck hair. Apparently, everybody, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but all guys under 35, they keep themselves smooth. They just shave themselves.
Let me see if I can find this. Oh, here we go.
Top to bottom?
Take a gander. Take a gander.
A lot
of
them
this.
do.
Here, watch this.
Oh, hey, didn't see you there. You caught me trimming my outdoor hedges, not my indoor hedges. That's what this is for. The Lawnmower 3.0 by Manscaped. It's not only for cleaning your indoor hedges, you also can trim anything else, but that's your business. Go ahead and check out manscaped.com or swipe up on my story to see more. Back to what I was doing.
Now, the fine people at Manscaped do not pay us for that, but I find that commercial, Andy and I find that commercial so delightful from JaVale McGee that we probably play it 3 or 4 times a week. But you're right, the idea, 15, 20 years ago, when we were growing up, the idea that in 1988, Mike Schmidt would make a commercial essentially about shaving his pubic hair was really just beyond the pale. That was not going to happen. He wasn't going to talk. Men didn't talk about that.
Can we go back? No, the JaVale McGee. But if there is any, hidden video of Mike Schmidt doing that, I would love to see that. I think the it's funny that you bring that up. The new-ish, like the last 10 years or so, this thing of like, I forget what it's called. You guys are certainly Brian with his professional ability to slide into an ad read, just so nimbly. Impressive stuff. Maybe you know the answer to this, but I wonder when the I forget what that's called when you do an ad, and if somebody if you get one customer to use it, that you get paid a percentage of that, whatever it is. Chris Berman clearly does that
commission?
these days. Whatever that's called. Yeah. Direct response. I think that's what it's called. Direct response ads. Anyway,
nobody's ever paid
the weirdest of them all. Like Frank Thomas, The Big Hurt, like one of those weirdo ads, like with like hey, and the ladies will like it too. Like, oh, come on, Big Hurt. You don't make enough money that you have to do that. But the weirdest ones ever, Jimmy Johnson, the storied pro football and college football champion, wins at the U. He carries that dynasty in to another era off of the hands of Howard Schnellenberger. Then he moves on to America's team. He takes that team to a dynasty there. So many pelts on the wall, worth millions of dollars. And then he makes the Extends ad. He's like, hey, fellas, everywhere I go, people want to ask me. Guys are always asking me, Coach, does Extends really work? I say, yes, go long. Like, how much are you making, Coach? How much are you making to do that ad? I use it, and let me tell you, it works. Like, now I can't think of anything else. You're going to get inducted into the Hall of Fame, and that's the only thing I'm going to be thinking about, Coach Jimmy Johnson.
First of all, nobody, and I mean nobody, has ever gone up to Jimmy Johnson to ask him, basically, how's your stamina, Coach? I mean, that's never happened, ever. I can promise you, nobody has ever asked Jimmy Johnson that. I don't think anybody really even wants to be thinking about that.
No.
That's never happened.
No,
like,
right. That's
ever.
the other point. Yes, yes, we're supposed to buy that anybody out there is like, Jimmy Johnson's great. Needs a little Extends, though. Like, it's changed my life. I took the bizarre thing that whose idea was it? You know who we should get? Who at the marketing department at Extends was like, you know who we should go after? Jimmy Johnson. What?
Because when you think sexual
how many people did they go through before they got to Jimmy? That's the question. Because there's no way they went to like a 50-something or 60-something-year-old man. He wasn't number one on the list. He wasn't their first choice, right?
Well, it used to be like when people first started doing those spots, it was always like, now I don't have a problem, but I know it's out there. Like nobody would be willing to come. Like, and if Jimmy Johnson was doing the manscaping commercial, he'd be like, no, I don't trim down there, but some other people do. But like now everybody's just like, yes, let's get after it. Let's keep ourselves trimmed down there. Like, Jimmy Johnson would probably do a Manscaped ad if you asked him to.
Yeah, you're right. There is an evolution to these things. It's funny how you learn from the previous iteration of those kinds of things, and it reminds me of Dwayne Wade and Nick Cannon today. The latest scandal.
Yes,
it used to be that you reacted. There was one age before Twitter and everything else, before things were held on. Then, Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa kind of changed things, and people felt like they had been duped, and this raised the bar, and then everything's been different since then. Then Twitter comes around, and now everything is held to the highest of scrutiny. I always love to in sharp relief, I like to look back at Pittsburgh Steelers legend and hilarious human anecdote, Fats Holmes, who was an original member of the Steel Curtain, one of the four guys on the original Steel Curtain, Fats Holmes, who, along with Mean Joe Green, Dwight White, and L.C. Greenwood, won those Super Bowls. Also, he had mental issues, legitimate mental issues. Did Fats Holmes, so much so that once he thought he was being followed on the highway around Pittsburgh, I think is where he was, and wherever he was, he thought he was being followed. Then he thought the police helicopter overhead was chasing him, so he started shooting a gun through his car at the thing, and it's like, in hindsight, around Pittsburgh, people are like, "Oh, that Fats Holmes was a character." What?
That's just Fats being Fats.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't that zany when he was shooting at the cops? Like, what? He did what? Wait, what happened now? But now you hear so then we get to the place where you must issue an apology for your bad deed, which is a good thing. But I feel like when it doesn't feel super earnest, it loses something. And so you always see that thing of like, okay, so what I said. Then the next day, or maybe within hours, then you get the publicist's written response that they issue. But then these days, the new wrinkle in 2020 is the first apology ain't quite good enough. We need a second one. We need a double down. That's the new phase. We need two apologies.
We just went through that a little bit with like the Nick Cannon thing. And the only difference is the Nick Cannon, the first apology actually wasn't good enough. And then it legitimately fell short.
It actually wasn't an apology. That was part of the problem.
That was part of the problem. Like Deshaun, people were picking on Deshaun Jackson for not being like, I was like, you know what? Okay, like as far as I don't like. I'm like you, Dave. I don't want to parse your apology. I don't want to be like, did he really? Remember with Tiger, like, did he really show sympathy when he was like, well, I don't know. Was it good enough? I don't know if his apology's good enough.
I don't know. Tiger doesn't owe me an apology. Right. He didn't cheat on me. Like he owes his wife an apology
and that nice lady at Perkins. Like those are the people.
He doesn't owe me anything. Like I'm a grown ass adult.
But Nick Cannon's first apology fell a little short. I do.
Well, I mean, that's right. And Dwayne Wade is now doing the same thing. I do always wonder, though, I am skeptical of these apologies when you can tell. Can't you take the time to try and put it in the guy's voice a little bit? Can't you?
Okay. All right. There we go.
I don't get it. Sorry about that, fellas.
I don't think it was you. I think I think the internet broke.
I appreciate you both doing what I imagine was some fabulous vamping until I got back.
No, Dave wasn't. I was just literally just me saying nothing, trying to figure out what was happening.
But what did you do there? See, that's when that reminds me of Kimmel up on the stage at the when they announced Best Picture a few years ago, like that.
Oh, the Moonlight fiasco.
That's the test of all tests, you know.
Okay, you know Jimmy. I mean, you guys, are you still in contact? Like, because you used to work for his show.
I was never allowed to actually. A fun story. Never allowed to make eye contact with him. But yeah, I mean, know him. Yeah, that was his rule. Not just for me. That was his rule.
We've been friends for years, but we've never made eye contact. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, right. But he insisted, you tell everybody. He used to insist to the staff, you must tell everybody I'm a great boss. That was his thing. I'm like, all right, okay. He was like, but don't look at me.
You just have to assume that Kimmel said it because you could never actually look up and confirm it because then there might have been eye contact. Have you ever talked with him before about like just what that moment was like? Because that's got to be one of the most terrifying things.
I'll tell you, the one thing I will say, watching that on TV. In that moment, I remember thinking, you're watching it all go down, and you could feel the panic. And I'm sitting there with my wife, and oh my God, this is insane! This is an all-time. Wait, what is happening? This isn't a bit. The one thing I felt in that moment was the one person who is the perfect guy to have in that spot right there is Kimmel. He loved that moment because and. How many human beings, for real, there are some deeply funny people, some clever people, some great on their feet. How many people in that moment when like, wait, what? Producers are probably yelling to you and like, I don't know what to do. And like, oh, what are you going to do? And he turns to Warren Beatty, celluloid hero. He turns to him and goes, Warren, what did you do? That's the best.
Well, I mean, first of all, I know there's a ton of pressure in that moment, but Kimmel does know. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I'm 100% sure I didn't screw it.
It wasn't my fault.
I had nothing to do, right? Yeah.
So I can try to fix this because nobody's going to blame me because they know I didn't do it wrong. Like,
and yet his publicist still released an apology. I don't know why. They had nothing to do with it.
And then a second one.
Well, you know why? It's because in the beginning, Kimmel refused to apologize. Like, he put out a statement on Twitter that was very staunchly anti-apology. And that's where the publicist had to come in.
I just shared my truth. What's wrong with that? Oh, I see. It's gonna get me.
Yeah,
okay.
well,
I do have to say I deeply regret everyone.
I can tell you.
I deeply regret whatever just happened, and I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I can tell you, and other people will be able to tell you that watched through that moment. I didn't handle it nearly as well as Kimmel did. I can't vamp and try to type and press the buttons at the same time. So I chose.
So you're saying in this moment you did worse. When you lost,
well,
no, your
say,
brother and Dave. This was worse for you.
I didn't curse. I did, and I managed to get everybody back on. Like I fixed the glitch. But there wasn't a lot of entertainment happening while I was fixing the glitch.
You know, Kimmel was just asked to sort of improvise through the moment. He wasn't asked to actually run the show like the tech end of the Oscars.
He wasn't sitting at the board going, let's bring up camera 2. It's like,
let's not give Kimmel too much credit. I mean, sure, he improvised in front of an entire global audience with nobody knowing what was going on, but
was he working the app? I don't think so.
No,
I'll tell you this. Here's now the name dropping has already begun. I will continue with it. I once did, for one summertime, there was a startup radio station in Pittsburgh, PA, and I couldn't move back there because I was doing stuff here, of course. And Jimmy, being the mensch that he is, said, I have an ISDN line. I don't know if ISDN lines are still a thing in 2020, but 12, 14 years or so ago, that would allow you to broadcast from your house or wherever else, and you could go all over the place. And it was this box that it was pretty useful that you could broadcast remotely with. And he said, I have an ISDN in my spare bedroom if you want to just go do the show from there. And I said, I have to do it every night though, man, from 4 to 7. He said, that's okay. You can use, I'm doing the show anyway, so you can go and do it from 4 to 7 every night, which is, a remarkable gesture by anybody to get, hey, just go ahead, treat my house as your own and go broadcast there. And I went on, it was a startup Pittsburgh show, Pittsburgh radio station. And I literally got on the air and we got 20 minutes in. And these are the days before texting and everything. You could not DM, but whatever that was called on AOL Messenger. I'm messengering with the producer. I am messaging.
Instant messaging.
Right. And so I'm talking to the producer, the kid, the 22-year-old on the board back in Pittsburgh, like, when are we supposed to go to break here? You never told me when we're supposed to go to break. He types back as I'm talking. I'm the only voice. I'm the only voice on the show. He didn't have a mic back there. So I'm the lone voice. And I'm like, when do we go to no ads? We have no ads sold for the first week. And I said, what do you mean no ads? When do we go to the break? He said, you don't. You go to break. I would get 90 seconds from 58:30 to the top of the hour.
Wow.
every hour. And for the first week, I was the only voice, could not take calls, had no ads, had no anything. And for 1 week, I mean, it was the crucible. It was, as people say, like, you come through on the other side stronger. But in the moment, it was like, for those first few days, like, I don't understand what you want me to do here. Just talk? And they're like, yeah, you're the host of the radio show. But it was the greatest training of all time.
I gotta be honest, like, I don't mean to say this like we're like heroes or anything like that. I mean, I'm not saying we're not, but
you could be. Let other people make that decision for you.
True. This is not a value.
I'll put it on a poll.
Are we heroes?
I'm just going to put that out there.
By the way, you're welcome, America. But,
what kind of creep's going to say no to that poll?
But you're welcome. But I don't know if we're like the heroes in the sense of like first responders. Probably very close, but. There are people who are so ingrained, and this is one of the things I don't like about radio, like so ingrained in them, like I can talk for 12 minutes, but then I need to stop for 4.5. Like who couldn't do this, like just come up and put somebody on a screen and just kind of riff for an hour. Like we like this has become a skill that like classic radio people, it used to be that you could tell people who did TV and not radio, because the TV people could only speak for 4 minutes before they would need to take some sort of break. And like, there was no, like they couldn't improvise, they couldn't do anything. So you could tell TV people who were on the radio couldn't do radio. Now it's like radio people who do podcasting but don't know how to, like they can't talk past 12 minutes. Like, so in some ways, Dave, the point of this story is, Dave, you were ahead of your time.
Oh, I believe me. I have done. I've done enough radio over the last 10. I had a few opportunities to sit in and do full shows and everything else, and now it's the other way. It is so hard to get any point out. I mean, especially for a blowhard like me. I mean, it takes me 37 minutes to say anything. It's impossible. It's an impossible endeavor. Like, by the time you welcome back to the show, and here's what we're talking about, and coming up next hour, and this is sponsored by blank, and it's like, oh, we got to go to break. All right, we're going to get to that after the next commercial. It really is a tough drill for me.
I remember years ago, Hacksaw. I remember one time I was listening to a segment of his, and like Hacksaw, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of him.
Lee Hamilton, yeah.
Lee Hamilton, Hacksaw, did a lot of his show was callers from all over the country, and he loved to shout out the areas people were calling from, and he would set up topics, and then he would let people know from all over the country who he wanted to hear from. And I remember
volleyball line is open.
Yeah, I remember this one time. He spent an entire segment just calling out to different cities and regions about the stuff that he wanted to get into. And I think he genuinely lost track of where he was in the show because it was the last segment. So basically, it was just him shouting out geography, and then the show ended. I think he just – either that or it was a repeat. And they forgot where they were in the repeat. One or the other.
I'm very jealous of these shows that are like, oh, it's the hottest morning show. These guys, that gang is so funny, but they play music throughout. It's like, well, we're only talking for like 8 minutes an hour. What are you talking? How hard is it to pull something off in that amount of time? The greatest thing, I didn't even know it at the time when Hacksaw was on, or at least when I was aware of his presence. I didn't know his old thing was. He would take other people's interviews and plug his voice doing the interview side of things.
Wait, really?
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I know that.
I can't believe.
That's genius. Oh, no. Did it happen again? Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. Oh, Dave's back.
Oh, then we're back. We did it. Yeah, no,
Andy's still frozen, but he's the most unimportant part of this.
Yeah,
so as long as we can see
go on without me. Save yourselves.
I don't know what's happening.
I don't know either. I don't know if that's me or you, but either way, you're hearing me, right?
Yes. Yes.
I didn't know if you'd be so polite, like, just let him go. Just let him go. It doesn't make a difference. He just likes the sound of his own voice anyway. Just let him talk.
Show's been over for a half hour.
Don't let him down. Poor old man. He can't even put his face, center it in the thing. Who knows? But yeah, that's apparently what he used to do. He would also on conference calls. I think what he would do is, when a coach or a player would be available to the media at large for a conference call, he would take everybody's questions from that. He would take the athletes' responses to everybody's questions. Then he would retrack himself asking that question and then plug it in. Here's my interview with Jamal Wilkes.
That is so brazenly unethical. I actually respect it.
I love it.
That's over the top. I love it.
I had never heard this before.
I'm surprised you guys didn't, but yeah, no,
I didn't know that.
That's outrageous. that really
makes the gig a lot. One, it makes the gig a lot easier,
yes.
And that's obvious. But on some level, there's an opportunity to have a great deal of fun by changing what the question was.
Do you think he did that, though? I doubt he actually did that.
No, but you guys are scamps like me. You guys would change that when I love
yes.
it. It wouldn't be like you wouldn't ask it about what do you think about playing with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? You ask it, ask him something embarrassing. What do you think about at your house, Kareem? What do you think about going pantsless for a week? I love it. Interesting question, Hacksaw. That's the sort of thing that we might come up with.
So he's subbing in his own voice for the actual questions being asked.
I think he was repeating the actual question. I don't think he was doing what I'm. Yeah, nonsense. But yes,
like that's out. Like, yeah, what you're suggesting, that's a bit, and people will either think it's funny or they won't think it's funny. But that's a bit, and people have done that before. But the idea of basically just recycling somebody else's...
I hope I haven't revealed some industry secret, and I'm going
to... Well, first of all, I
just hope it's true. Right. Right. I just hope you're not thinking of someone else.
No, I'm 99.9% sure that I have that exactly right.
Oh, crap. Right. Turns out it was Marv Albert.
I will issue an apology tomorrow if I have
and a sincere one, and one that will require a second one. It'll be a sincere one. You'll at Hacksaw in the apology.
Hacksaw Hamilton and anyone else I may have offended with my poorly chosen words.
That is amazing.
I appreciate the opportunity to have people educate me on the mistakes that I've made, particularly that Lee Hamilton didn't actually do the thing that I said he did. That's what most of the conversation centers around.
I'm not accusing him of a felony or anything. Just
Well, it's a radio felony. I mean, it's pretty close.
It is a radio.
It's about as bad of a thing you can do on the radio.
Listen, fellas, you didn't hear it from me. That's it. All right.
That's all right.
Let's just put this on Nick Cannon. Everybody will just be water under the bridge with everything else.
Force is close to the late night happy hour. Say
right. We'll
it's amazing.
Andy and I, we can just blame it on our people. That seems to be the trend now. Anyway, I have a couple questions for you because nothing drives my wife crazier than when I get very, very high and mighty about all the foods that we invented in St. Louis. I'm not sure if you knew this about St. Louis. We take credit for basically every food that's ever been invented. We take credit for it.
Basically that it was part of the World's Fair.
Right, the 1904 World's Fair. But like the ice cream cone, hamburgers, gooey butter cake. Oh, yeah. We gooey butter cake, toasted ravioli, thin crust pizza.
Toasted ravioli, legit. We
actually really did.
And it's awesome.
You invented people who live in a castle who are tolerant of others. No, that was a different city.
We're waiting for the tolerant part.
Yeah, right.
I saw the Photoshop. I saw the Photoshop you guys did on your podcast art where they stuck your faces on those people. It was deeply disturbing, and I can't unsee it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was funny.
Yeah,
my partner did not. He didn't think it was funny. I think, you know what? It's funny you brought this up, and you'll take offense to this, as you should, as proud natives of your homeland. Last year,
the day ask.
A year ago, I undertook a righteous sort of investigation to figure out which sports town had the best food and rank them 1 through 35-ish. And unless I'm mistaken, toasted ravioli is your thing, right? Like that's the number one.
It's really good.
Or is it? And Kansas City is burnt ends.
Yeah, those are good too.
Those are good.
I put toasted ravioli pretty close to the bottom. I don't mind telling you.
Really? Do you remember where you got it?
Believe me, Skyline chili is the worst of the worst.
Skyline chili is awful. It is
soup.
Awful. It is the
chili
worst
soup.
Chili ever.
Chili soup poured over some sad noodles.
It's horrible.
What do you think? And I there was some controversy because I gave LA 2 because, there are 2 teams for every sport in Los Angeles, like New York. What would you guys say as transplants? What would you say are the signature items? And these aren't like what you eat at a tailgate. I'm talking about, like we say, the signature item. By the way, Detroit claims thick square pizza. That's like Detroit style, they call it. Talk about what you're talking about, invented everything. It's like,
yeah.
I think that land called Italy had square deep dish pizza before Detroit did.
Well, I mean,
wrong with you.
As you know, Dave, nothing counts until America claims it.
Apparently, yeah.
As Americans, we only count what we do. That's just the way it works. We don't really acknowledge the rest of the world. as we're learning right now.
Yes. As long as you don't pay
science.
attention to anything outside what everybody in this country is saying right now about.
Currently,
we don't need to go down that well. But yes.
Currently, we're not allowed to visit the rest of the world. So I mean,
that is true.
We have we really can only pump up ourselves. So wait, where did you get your toasted ravioli that you thought it was garbage? Because even again, my wife, who rolls
I didn't think
her
it was
eyes,
garbage. I didn't think it was garbage. I'm just taking a shot.
I quoted you as saying it was garbage. And so, like, my wife, who again rolls her eyes at everything we take credit for food-wise in St. Louis, she thinks toasted ravioli are delicious.
Really?
They're wonderful.
Okay. I don't understand St. Louis ribs when baby backs exist. That's one of those things. Like, what is preferable about it's St. Louis is meatier than the baby back?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's different
pork though, right?
Yes.
It's still pork.
Yes. Yeah. They're good.
What would you say are LA's signature items?
See, that's interesting because so much of my time, like in sports in LA, has been spent in a press room. Like I haven't done nearly as much like tailgating in this city, so it's kind of a hard
It's not owed to like tailgating, even though I said sports town. I think
the consummate LA sports food is actually the thing you get on your way in or the way out, which is the bacon wrapped hot dog.
Oh, that's a fun one.
That's not
bad.
That's
a pretty good one.
I think.
I would go like maybe a street taco.
Yeah.
A lot of people said, "Oh, Southern California, you got to go fish taco," and it's like, I don't want to be micro on you. That's further San Diego,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Further down the coast.
It's further down.
The one I went was that I got a lot of pushback on is crispy tuna rice. I know that's a very specific item.
Yeah, I'm
but
pretty sure that's not
item.
the consummate LA sports food, but it's delicious.
I know that's sports. Listen, a lot of people like sushi, and that is an item I don't think is available in most sushi restaurants.
I actually think you nailed it with the street tacos, and just like the taco trucks, because that's something that has gotten super popular in LA, as I think tacos have gotten more popular in general. And LA has so much great Mexican food and so many different regions of Mexico in LA's Mexican food. I think that might be sort of the quintessential LA thing. Like at least now.
If you're talking about you're talking about like LA food generally, I agree with you. I think it's like it's all the street food. It's generally the Mexican related street carts. But again, sports stuff. I mean, I associate bacon wrapped hot dogs with sports more than.
No, that's a good call.
Great call, and it's hard to say no. It really is.
So
they always talk about the dangers of booze and how it lowers your inhibitions, and specific to the 19 right now, you talk louder and your inhibitions are low. The real danger of booze is you lower your inhibitions. When you walk out of the bar and you smell one of them wieners grilling up there with the bacon wrapped around it, good luck saying no. You ain't human if that thing doesn't get inside your soul.
I actually don't like hot dogs. I never have. I haven't liked them since I was a little kid. But those bacon wrapped ones on the way out, those even smell great to me. And I'm not even tempted, but just objectively speaking, they smell amazing. But Brian and I actually, in doing a little bit of Pittsburgh research, because we were debating doing like a type of game, we were looking up some Pittsburgh food, and there were a few things we wanted to ask you about. Mm-hmm. I know, because we had never heard of a few of these things. Is the Pittsburgh salad, which I understand is basically a salad with fries as the topping, is that really a thing?
Or is that just like kitchen?
No,
they actually call it that.
No, you can get the fries on there. You want to eat a salad? That's not a meal, dude. You gotta eat the French fries right on there.
So it's an actual salad with French fries on top.
I to be honest, I've never had that.
Okay.
And Primanti's is the famous place that puts the fries on everything.
Which is delicious.
It's one of those. That's a fun list to also put together. Is Monday Night Football or otherwise, big national sporting event. What are the bump in and bump out B-roll shots that they use? Like at Seattle, at Pike's Market or whatever. What's that one called? The kid catching the fish. They always show that. Say Pittsburgh, they always will show the Primanti sandwich on that, and it's delectable. But that's not the only place you get it. Pittsburgh style is fries on the sandwich.
Right, and you guys invented the Clark bar.
That's right. Yep, it's right. It's basically in the shadow of Heinz Field and PNC Park at this point, right across the street there. You walk right by the Clark Bar on your way into Steeler games.
This is one my kids would really appreciate because they love them. You invented the Klondike Bar.
Is that true? I didn't even know that. Oh, yeah. It's the land of riches. I say it all the time, and I'll say it to you again now. People who wanted to spare, we had Gene Kelly singing in the rain, Dr. Thomas Starzl,
Michael Keaton,
organ transplant, Michael Keaton, of course. Yes, so many great comedy people.
Mr. Rogers.
Yep.
David O. Selznick, Mark Cuban.
Mark Cuban from Pittsburgh, went to Indiana University,
Christina
went on to fame
Aguilera.
and fortune. I mean, you're proving my point. We started the Ferris wheel. We invented that one.
You did.
And of course, as I always say, I know people don't like the success of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and so they condescend about it or whatever. They say things, but just remember, the Pittsburgh Steelers are named after the heroes from the mid-20th century who forged the product that went into the tanks and the battleships that defeated the Nazi scourge. So if you don't like Pittsburgh, you don't like freedom. That's what I say to you.
Yes! Actually, Brian, you should share with Dave your experience with Steelers camp years ago.
Well, sure. I will say this. They were the nicest people I've ever met. Andy and I, back in the day when magazines would fly you around for outrageously expensive projects, because we're St. Louisans, we're orphans of the NFL, and we were abandoned by our team when we were young. And so we pitched the magazine to let us travel around to NFL training camps to have
ESPN
the magazine to have them to pitch those teams to be their next fan. It was a fun idea.
Love that. Yeah,
and
great idea.
And I went to Pittsburgh.
Really fun.
And the reason I didn't choose the Steelers is too much. Like, what I learned was if they don't win, like if the Steelers don't win on Sunday, then you are obligated to be in a terrible mood until the following Sunday or whenever it is next that the Steelers win. And I'm like, I can't live like that. That's too much. That's too much intensity to just dive right into. You have to grow up in that to be able to.
It's wrong-headed for any kids out there. I understand we're a society of front runners. You cannot jump in on a team that has already had that much success.
Right. I agree with you. I couldn't, but they were lovely people in the organization. Super.
You went down Latrobe. You went. You headed down.
I did. I absolutely
did. Land of Arnie Palmer.
They were so nice, and I will say, no city has ever surprised me more than Pittsburgh. I've never been there, and I'm just driving along, and it's like suburban whatever. You're coming back from I'm leaving the airport. And I'm in my rental car, and I go through a tunnel, and it's like, holy bleep, this is beautiful. And it's like this city just spreads out in front of you. I was very impressed.
I've heard the baseball park is amazing.
It really is one of the. I have not been to the new St. Louis ball yard, but yeah, PNC
is prettier.
It's hard to compete with. I love St. Joint. That
is amazing. The one right off the water, and they got the big glove, that huge mitt.
I know Angelinos aren't probably inclined to make the trip up to San Francisco, but pro tip for you: get the seats up high behind home plate. Those are also some of the best seats in Dodger Stadium. But if you perch yourself up high behind home plate, not only do you look down at the ball game, beyond you see the bay laying out behind you. Oh,
I don't care how much Dodger fans hate the Giants and wouldn't want to even support the organization with ticket purchases. It's worth going.
It's so great. Yeah, go up there and go pick a good series against the Dodgers, and you'll enjoy that. I love to talk with guys like you who are of a certain age who got to watch Neil Lomax and Roy Green in their heyday. Roy Green is one of my favorite football guys. I guarantee you 98%
can't believe we're only bringing this up now. We only got 3.5
have
minutes
no idea who
left.
Roy Green. Nobody knows who he is.
Green.
It
is
so
weird.
Great.
There are so many.
Played on both sides of the ball briefly.
People do not. For whatever reason, there's some stories that people latch on to, and they are perpetuated for generations. Somehow, Roy Green, nobody knows who he is, and he was number 25. He played in the secondary and caught, I think, like 1 year, while he was also playing defensive back, like a starting defensive back for the Cardinals, was also catching passes from Neil Lomax. And then they said, oh, well, you're too good. Now you have to just be a wide receiver. So after like 2-3 seasons, they switched him fully to wide receiver. Then he led the league in receiving.
He was amazing. They had him and J.T. Smith were great. But my favorite Cardinal of all time, was a guy named Novo Božovic, who was one of their 73 kickers that they had during my youth. He was known. He only lasted like 3 weeks, but he was a guy who was known because after his first field goal, he followed the ball down the field, ran down the field at Busch Stadium, picked up the ball, and spiked it.
Is that right? I didn't know the legend of Novo. I love
Novo Božovic.
Okay, Dave, the year you're referring to is 1984, where he led the league in receiving yards, 1555. Roy Green that year, almost 100 yards.
That's a lot of that's
especially back then. Especially back then.
Grade that on the pass first, run second.
That's 6,000 yards today.
Yeah,
and assuming I'm reading this correctly, I mean he's listed as 16 starts that year. I'm trying to figure out the exact, or I don't know if it starts on both sides.
When he started as number 25 and was doing both. Then he switched to 81 when he fully committed to wide receiver. But I mean, he still was putting up numbers. And by the way, if I'm not mistaken, I think he also returned kicks.
Yes, he did. He did.
I mean, that was
back in the day when you used to have people do that. Like Joe Theismann returned kicks. Like there was an era where the quarterback, like teams put their quarterback to return kicks.
Now we're sounding really old, but here's the best one. Joe Theismann, in his early days, returned punts. I think it was until 1975 or 76. The year after he stops returning punts, the Dallas Cowboys draft Danny White, who is Roger Staubach's backup, but also was the punter.
He was the punter. Exactly right.
Roger Staubach retires in 79, and Danny White continues to be the kicker. It was like... Third and 11. I'm going to throw it now to Drew Pierce. Incomplete. All right, I'll punt. I'm going to punt. I'm going to drop back.
I feel like we've left a lot on the table. Can we do this again when you've announced your endeavors?
Yes.
All right, good.
Excellent.
Because we have to say goodbye because the show is literally going to stop. It's going to shut itself off in 10 seconds.
It self-destructs like Mission Impossible.
Oliver Maroney on Thursday. Andy Bernstein, legendary photographer, on Friday. Dave Dameshek, thank you so much.
Thanks, man. This was awesome.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks, fellas. Good times as always. Do it again soon.